Okay, let's build a trifold brochure in InDesign. First, let me talk to you a little bit about some things you have to consider when you're building a file for a trifold brochure. The most important thing is that the inside flap needs to be very slightly shorter. Otherwise, it would prevent the whole thing from folding flat. Also, you have to somehow let the printer know where to score these folds. Today we'll build this brochure that I got from Flor, modular floor covering. Pretty simple, so let's get started. So let's set it up. We want the width to be 3 of these panels, these 5-inch panels, except for, remember, we're taking a little bit off that one panel, so it's actually going to equal 14.9. It's going to be just shy of 15 inches. And then a height, of course, would be 5 inches. There are 2 pages because it's going to be the front and the back. We don't need to set up columns. We'll go ahead and stay with this 0.25 margin, and then of course the bleed. Even if we don't bleed, we want to set up the file so that we have that option. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to put in our fold lines and our margins on this inside part. You can see on the outside around the edges there's a 0.25 margin, but not in here. So we know that this is the inside flap, this left of this side. So sometimes it can help if you label them so you don't forget where you're at. So let's start from this left-hand side. We know that this is our short flap, which means it's going to be, instead of 5 inches, it's going to be 4.9. So I'm just going to drag a guide out, and then I'm going to type in the actual number, 4.9. That's my fold mark. And then the next fold line would be 5 inches over from that. So you could do the math, or you could type it in. I want this line to be 4.9 plus the 5 inches. So those are my fold lines. Those fold lines have to be marked for the printer. So what we're going to do is draw a line right on that, and we're going to make it a dashed line. That's kind of the protocol for fold lines. We're going to make it very, very small because we don't want it to be too fat for accuracy. I'm going to hold the Option key, and I'm just going to drag one down here. And I can put these just outside the bleed. Now I'm going to take those two. I'm going to hold the Option key and drag those over here so I don't have to keep making them. Now that's my fold line. I also need 0.25 margin on either side of that. So I can do that easily with math too. I'm just going to drag this over. Now remember, this fold line right here is 4.9, right? So this line, this guide, when I click on it, I'm going to put in here that I want it to be 4.9 minus 0.25. And there it is. Now I have a guide to the left of the fold line, and then to put one in front of it, I'll just drag this out somewhere, and I'm going to say that I want this to be 4.9 plus 0.25. And that's my second margin. I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to drag these 2 margins just in the vicinity of what I want, and then I'm going to put in the math, because you don't want to eyeball these things. You got to figure out exactly where they should be because it sets the whole brochure. So this one is 4.9 plus 5 minus 0.25. Amazing, right? It'll do all the math for you. So this one ends up being what? This fold line is 9.9, so we can actually take the math from there. 9.9 plus 0.25. Okay, so now we have 0.25 borders all around the edge and also along the inside. Now let's go and do the inside of the brochure. And of course, on this one, that flap that's slightly shorter is on the far right. First, we'll put in our fold lines. So this is easy, just going to be 5 inches. And this next one is going to be 10 inches. And then that will leave 4.9 on this side, this far right flap. So those are our fold lines, and you can use these fold lines from the other page. I'm going to select them, hold the Option key, and bring them on down here. Now up here it's 5.0035. We need it to be 5. So you can put the location of those precisely also. So I'm going to hold the Option key, drag those over, hold the Shift key. Now we need this. It's 10.000, but we need it exactly 10. So there we go. Now we have our fold lines. And so our margins, of course, will be you could say 5 minus 0.25. And that's our margin. We're trying to subtract the margin and add the margin so that on the inside we'll have that same spacing. And then this one I want to be 5 plus 25, which is 5.25. And then over here, I have 2 more margins on the side of this one. This one is 10 inches, right? So it should be 9.75. And then this one, our last one, should be 10.25. And that's how you divide your page up with the margins. Now I'm going to go to my swatches and I'm going to make the color for this brochure. So I'm just going to say new color swatch. And you can name it with the color value, or you could call it your lime green. And this is printing, so it's CMYK. And this color is 63 cyan, 5 magenta, 83 yellow, and it has no black in it. So each of the panels of this trifold have a square. This one goes here, and you want to make sure that that's snapping right to your guide. Looks like it is. You can go view, grids and guides, snap to guides right here. That'll help you. And I'm going to color that lime green. I also have a lime green panel in the back of the brochure. And then we also have one of those lime green squares at the bottom. So I'm going to hold Option and bring it down here and then snap it into place. And then now I have 3 photos that also go here. This square and these 2 squares are images. So the first thing I want to do is actually set up the boxes for them, because I know these boxes for this image sets right on these margins that I've made. So the best way would be to set these up first, and then we can get them to fit. So there's one. I'm going to hold the Option key just to drag it over here. Make it snap to these guides. Okay, so now that I have the image boxes set up, I don't even have to select them. I can just say place. I can find my 3 images. So I just have Flor photos 1, 2, and 3. I can actually hold the Shift key and load all of those up into my cursor, say open, and then I can just plop them in. One there, one there, one there. Now you're thinking, what about fitting, like moving them around and such? Well, we can do that also by going to Object, Fitting. Now, here's these options for fitting that image into that image box or container. I can fill the frame proportionately, which might crop some of that off. I can fit the content. Now, if you fit the content, it might leave a little at the bottom. Do you see how it's fit the content left to right? But there's blank at the top. Whereas when I put it under fill frame proportionately, that means it will entirely fill that square. Some of these other ones you can content aware fit, which is basically going to do the same thing. Fit the frame to content. We don't want to mess with any of these right now. So the best thing for these would be to fill the frame proportionately. So I'm going to go here and do the same thing. And that means that there's a little movement here left and right, but it has made it as small as it can be and still hit all 4 corners. Make sure when you click on these, not on the container says 100%, but when you double click on it, make sure that these proportions are the same. Okay, so now we have our boxes and we have our images. The only thing left to do is put in the type.